I'm Yoni. I'm VP Creative and one of the founders of Playtika. One of the founders, not the founder. It's a huge difference. And being VP Creative sounds good, it feels good. And I made this fancy logo. It's mine. Well, behind this mask and behind this fancy title, I'm a designer. And therefore, I'm not speaking today about numbers and KPIs and ROIs like the VPs do, and not even about design or design trends and social gaming. I've decided to speak today about something that comes from the guts of the doing, something that concerns me through my whole career, something that I find fundamental for any successful enterprise or project. And this, of course, would be a communication, but not any kind of communication, not some abstract, vague communication, but the one when you ask questions. I've called my presentation, what's your point? Or in other words, what the fuck are you saying? And this is the question which is referred to the people we work with. Product managers, project managers, monetization, marketing managers, you name it. And this is the dialogue, in my case, in my specific niche, between the designers and those clients. Not once, I find myself sitting and trying to decipher a spec, a brief, and I simply don't understand a word. It is nicely put, it uses professional terminology, but it's so complex, it's almost meaningless. So what are you saying? So during most of my career, I was very proud of my questions why. And I've always challenged my clients to stop and think and give me reasonable answers why this layout and not that layout, why this button and not that button. And then, all of a sudden, I realized that why is a very complex question. So why it's a very complex question? The proper question would be what? What do you want? Because they not always know what do they need. What the business goals are. What do we want from user? What do you want from me? For me to do? What is the message? What are you saying? And this is kind of a dialogue, by the way, I'm talking about. Just those are crucial. Why? There are actually two kinds of whys. Have you heard this question? What is the difference between the what and why? Why? Actually, there are two whys. The more, let's say, abstract, ideological, why are we doing this? This is a huge why, but without being hypocrite anymore, we can proudly say we're doing this for the revenues, for our bonuses, for the success of our companies. The other why, the advanced why, comes after you know what are you doing. You do your research, and then you know why are you doing a certain element or something. And the what comes in the middle of this huge why and the small operational why. What is the purpose? What is the goal? What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I want to show you two examples. And those are two sketches for one of our promotions. And I want you to please disregard the design, the composition, but please think in which of them this dialogue between the designer and the monetization manager took place. In which of them the designer asked, what. What is your message? What are we trying to say to the user? So this is the first one. And this is the second one. So, who thinks is the first one? Who thinks is the second one? Okay, so yeah, this is the second one. And those two actually represent two ways of doing things. The first one is called "we'll cross that bridge," or "we'll sort it out in the design later." Any designers here? Yay! So you know this one, right? And it looks like this. It all starts with, usually, with a spec, with the list of, not with a spec, with the list of requirements. We need this one and that one, we need this and that, and this footer and this button and this element. So anyway, this is cool, because we all have our business goals, we have users to satisfy, we have clients, managers to please, we have cows to milk. But the thing is that this list of requirements flies exactly as is, without almost without any modifications, exactly to the studio. And then you hear the sentence of, "We'll sort it out later in the design, let's move on." And the designers, of course, get this kind of a brief and think to themselves, this is a tough one. This would be a challenge. And let's make it pretty, without asking any proper questions, maybe except of some that concern the design directly, like fonts and colors and stuff. So they get this and make it pretty. Blake, yeah. So they make it pretty, and they play with composition and colors and typography, and it looks nice. And it looks nice on their fancy monitors. But the thing is, and the problem is a bummer, because all of those have to be now squeezed into the mobile screen, and it doesn't look good. It looks messy, it looks crowded. And then you hear another sentence. There is too much text. So Yale knows it. Too much text. So while you hear those two messages, those two sentences, we'll sort it out later in the design, and there's too much text? No, because from this point on, you are miserable with reducing the amount of text and trying to fit it into the design. And then you, by the way, not only at this point, you start prioritizing the messaging, and only at this point you start some kind of a dialogue between all the parties. So you reduce it. You've seen it? So yeah, you reduce it, and you play with the composition, and you keep reducing, you keep playing with composition because it doesn't fit well, it doesn't feel well yet. And you play with colors, and you're still reducing the text, and you play with colors, and eventually you nail it. So yeah, eventually you nail it. You will see the final screen here. So you've played with the design, you've played with the text, you're quite happy with it, you're quite happy with your teamwork, but with all this rush and excitement and panic mode you're working in, you've forgotten one crucial thing. You've forgotten the what. You've forgotten what was your message. You've lost all of them. And eventually, you've lost your user. So it happens in the best of the families. It happens in Facebook, it happens in Google, with all the fancy facades. And it doesn't matter whether you work with Agile or Waterfalls or whatever the system is, it happens. And the reason for this is not only a lack of professionalism. In most of the cases, it's simple lack of time, because all of us work under tremendous pressure. We work on parallel projects, and we simply cannot cover everything. We cannot think it all over, or at least we don't have time to cover it all over because It's a matter of time management. Another reason, I think, is that we tend to trust other people to do their job exactly as they trust us to do ours. It doesn't work that way. Never trust no one. This is my message to you, never. Question everything. So from where I stand, I expect the designers to question every element, every button, every letter in the spec. Because in my opinion, the designers are the final frontier. And those of you, by the way, who work with the designers, who work with the studio, please remember, we are the final frontier between the user and the organization. We are the last ones in this chain who can look both ways, deeply understand the needs of both of the parties, and respond and ask questions. And we always know better. Remember. So this was the design we were talking about without the clear message. And this one, that's how it looks in the real life. It's a mess. However, we have another way of doing things, another scenario. Tell me exactly what do you need. Very simple. So the starting point of this would be the same list of requirements. But at this point, we stop and we start raising questions. What are the business goals? What are the measurements of success? What are the needs of the users? What is the research? Whatever. Just ask everything and give answers for everything. Users' behavior, attention span, time in front of the screen. I don't know. And only at that point, after asking all the questions, you can finally start prioritizing the messages. By the way, what is the main message? And it doesn't matter, another doesn't matter, it doesn't matter whether it's a big feature or a promotion. So, after raising all these questions and prioritizing, you can see that you have less important messages. You have duplicated messages. You can just simply lose them. You have limited amount of real estate, and you have limited attention span of the user. Only after asking those what questions and eliminating the redundant noise, you finally get to the more or less precise brief, more or less precise spec. When you have one main message, maybe secondary message, you have all the actions, everything is very defined, and this spec goes to the developers, to the studio, to the QA, to the project, wherever. So the studio, while it receives this, and I want to focus on this one as a designer, and it's a shame there's just one designer here, because for me, as a professional, this is the most important state. Because through sketches, as a designer, I breathe, I create, I communicate with people, I'm getting feedbacks, I learn, I develop, and I'm pushing myself to the limits. And it sounds cliche, but it's true. Because creating a pretty design is easy. Creating an efficient design is a matter of hard work and creativity. So I always preach my designers to create as many sketches as possible, even as an exercise. Up to the point they can say, I've covered all the options, and those two work the best. And believe me, those two, one of those two will be finally approved without any redundant noise and mindfucks. So once you have your final, more or less, or actually, you have your defined spec, you know your messages, you have good designs and good sketches, and you finally get to the final feature, to the state where you can say, we have a damn good feature. the message is delivered directly to the user. And this is how it looks in real life. And the sentence above, as obvious as it looks, as childish as it looks, it's true. Clear message equals happy user. To summarize, and the next slide, this is the slide I want you to take home with you. By the way, it doesn't matter if you're designers or not. You spend a little on planning, you mess a lot with the design and all the noises around, and you get a shower of confusing messages. Or you spend a lot of time on planning and asking those questions, what? You create a precise design, and you have a purified message that goes directly to the user. And here, this is the place where the magic happens. Thank you.
Do you feel that it's easier to answer the what rather than the why in those situations?
You can't answer why before you know what you're doing. So yeah, it's easier to answer what, actually. It's easier to answer what better than why.
Can you give us a history of the founding of Playtika? I mean, so I've been around, I've been to your offices. Playtika's been inspirational to me for a number of years, ever since I came here for the first time almost 3 years ago.
Okay.
But I don't know how you guys got started. I don't know your starting story. Could you tell me what gave you the guys' idea to come together?
Actually, it would be, it's a funny thing, but it's always in the eyes of the beholder. But my story is that Uri Shahak, the founder of Playtika, we've been working together in 888 for a few years. We made the first video slots for 888 together. And then we both left the company, continued our way, but all of us dreamed of raising a company, doing games, actually. And then at some point we met and we started to develop some kind of concepts of creating something playable, something with a video slots. And then he continued with this. He raised funds, he found investors, and then he invited me to join. And where's Raz? The third one, by the way, is the guy was sitting somewhere here. It was Raz Friedman. Mm-hmm. And then actually we've gathered all the people. We were 6 at the beginning. Just 6 idiots that wanted to make games, passionate about making games.
So, so Playtika has been 16 years. Is that what I heard?
Playtika has been
How many years? I missed
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah, it was 6 and something years ago.
That's what I re-asked because I didn't understand.
Yeah, 2010.
Okay, 2010. So in relative terms, a fairly new company, and you guys have taken off from there just in a few short 6 years. So when I first met you guys 3.5 years ago in San Francisco, you were only around 2.5 years at that point.
Yep.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I
really
appreciate you sharing that.
Wonderful, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.